Hi domainers! Thank you all so much for watching and supporting my channel. I really appreciate every like, comment, and share. IT truly means a lot. Grab your popcorn as we let Rose share with US her reality. My supervisor looked me straight in the eye and slapped my hand off the desk. The sound echoed through the open office, and everyone froze. My cheeks burned hot as she smiled that cold, perfect smile and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Pay attention when I'm teaching you, or you'll never learn anything." I stood there, my hand stinging, or mercy from wondering how I'd ended up in this nightmare. My name is Rose Kingsley, and I'm about to tell you how the woman who made my life hell ended up begging the family she never knew I had. I grew up behind tall gates and security cameras. My father, Harrison Kingsley, built an empire from nothing, and my mother made sure we never forgot how lucky we were. But lucky felt more like trapped. I had tutors instead of classmates, drivers instead of friends, and a schedule that left no room for mistakes. Every decision was made for me, every path already chosen. When I turned 22, I thought I'd finally join the family company like my older brother Collins had. Instead, my father sat me down in his study and said the words that changed everything. You need to work somewhere else first. Learn what real work feels like. Learn humility and structure. Then you can come home. I wanted to argue, but the look in his eyes told me this wasn't a discussion. So I applied to places where nobody knew my last name, where my father's money meant nothing. That's how I ended up at Silverline Consulting, a mid-sized firm downtown, as an administrative intern making minimum wage. My parents didn't know I'd have to learn another lesson entirely. My first day at Silverline Consulting felt like stepping into another world. The office was smaller than my father's waiting room, with fluorescent lights that buzzed and cubicles pressed close together. I wore a simple blouse and black pants I bought myself, nothing designer, nothing that screamed wealth. I wanted to blend in. Mr. Daniel Wright met me at reception. He was maybe 50, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a warm handshake that immediately put me at ease. "Welcome to the team, Rose," he said, leading me through the maze of desks. "We're glad to have you here. I think you'll learn a lot." Then I met Mrs. Agatha Rowland. She was tall and elegant, always perfectly dressed, with sharp features and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. She was the senior administrative supervisor, which meant she'd be training me directly. "So you're the new intern," she said, looking me up and down like I was something she'd scraped off her shoe. "Let's see if you last longer than the others." Something cold settled in my stomach as she walked away. Mr. Wright patted my shoulder gently and said, "Don't worry, she's tough but fair." The first week, Agatha seemed almost helpful. She showed me filing systems and introduced me to staff members. But by the second week, things changed. "Rose, I need coffee from the cafe down the street," she'd say during work hours. "Make sure it's hot this time." Or, "Rose, my lunch is in the break room fridge. Heat it up for me." Tasks that had nothing to do with my actual job kept piling up. She'd send me to pick up her dry cleaning during my lunch break. She made me wash dishes in the break room sink while others ate. When I tried to explain I had assigned work to finish, she'd laugh that brittle laugh and say loud enough for everyone to hear, "Oh, I forgot you're too important for simple tasks." How silly of me. The other staff members would look away, uncomfortable but silent. One afternoon, she called me into her office and spent 20 minutes explaining a simple task, then mocked me when I asked a clarifying question. "Is this really that hard for you to understand? Maybe you're not cut out for office work." I went home that night and cried in my car before driving to my apartment, the small studio I'd rented to prove I could make it on my own. It happened during a busy afternoon when the office was full. Agatha was explaining a new filing system, standing over my desk while I took notes. I was concentrating hard, trying to write down every detail because I knew she'd test me later. My hand was resting on the desk, pen in the other hand. Without warning, she slapped my hand off the desk. The sharp crack made everyone stop talking. Keyboards went silent. Phones were lowered. My hand throbbed where she'd hit it, but the humiliation hurt worse. "Pay attention when I'm teaching you," she said, her voice dripping with false patience. "Or you'll never learn anything. I'm trying to help you, but you keep daydreaming." I looked up at her, my eyes burning with tears I refused to let fall. She was smiling, enjoying this. Around us, people pretended to work, but I could feel their eyes on me. Mr. Wright stood up from his desk across the room, his face troubled, but Agatha waved him off. "Just a teaching moment, sir. Nothing to worry about." That night, I sat in my apartment and realized the truth. This wasn't tough love or strict mentorship. This was abuse. And everyone was letting it happen. 2 weeks after the slapping incident, Agatha called me into her office and closed the door. My stomach twisted. Nothing good ever happened behind that closed door. "Rose, I need you to do something for me," she said, not looking up from her computer. "Mr. Wright keeps expensive drinks in his office cabinet. Bring me 2 bottles. He won't notice." I stared at her. "You want me to steal from Mr. Wright?" She finally looked at me, her eyes cold. "I'm asking you to get me something that won't be missed. He has plenty. Consider it part of your training in resourcefulness." My hands started shaking. I knew this was wrong, but what choice did I have? She was my supervisor. If I refused, she could make things even worse. So I waited until Mr. Wright left for a meeting, slipped into his office, and took 2 bottles of expensive whiskey from his cabinet. My heart pounded the entire time. The next day, Mr. Wright noticed. He called a staff meeting, his usually kind face tight with disappointment. "Someone took items from my office. I'm not angry, but I need honesty." Before I could speak, Agatha stood up. "Sir, I saw Rose leaving your office yesterday afternoon when you were in meetings." Everyone turned to look at me. My mouth fell open in shock. After Agatha lied about the theft, everything got worse. She didn't just abuse me privately anymore. She started spreading rumors. In the break room, I'd hear whispers stop when I entered. Co-workers who used to smile at me looked away. One afternoon, I overheard 2 women talking by the coffee machine. I heard she acts like she's better than everyone. One said, "Agatha says she's spoiled and disrespectful, refuses to do basic tasks." The other nodded. "She probably comes from money and thinks she's too good for real work." I wanted to scream that none of it was true, but who would believe me? Agatha had been there for years. She had credibility, friends, and power. I was just a struggling intern who'd supposedly stolen from the boss. My only allies were Mr. Wright, who still treated me with kindness despite the whiskey incident, and another intern named Marcus who started 3 months before me. Marcus pulled me aside one day and whispered she did the same thing to the last intern, made her life so miserable she quit after 2 months. Just hang in there. But hanging in there felt impossible. I'd wake up with anxiety twisting my stomach, dreading another day of humiliation. My father called once and asked how work was going. I told him it was educational. I couldn't admit I was failing at the one thing he'd asked me to do. 3 months into my internship, I was in the break room with Marcus and another co-worker named Harriet who worked in HR and had always been neutral toward me. We were talking about career goals, and Harriet mentioned she was looking for new opportunities. "I'm hoping to move to a bigger company," she said, "somewhere with more room to grow." I took a breath and said, "Actually, I have a friend whose company might be hiring." Would you be interested in me asking? Harriet's face lit up. Really? That would be amazing. Then I added carefully, they might also be looking for someone in communications or administrative leadership. Do you know anyone who might be interested? I watched Harriet think. Agatha's been talking about wanting to move to a bigger company. She's always saying Silverline is too small for someone with her skills. And it clicked. I could see the moment the idea formed. My heart started beating faster. Really? Maybe I could ask my friend if they'd consider her. What kind of role would she want? The seed was planted. I left the break room and went to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and called my Uncle James, my father's younger brother who handled HR at Kingsley Holdings. Uncle James, I need a favor. The phone call lasted 10 minutes. I explained everything to Uncle James. Not the abuse, just that I'd met someone whose skills might benefit the company. I suggested they might want to recruit her for their corporate communications department. Uncle James was quiet for a moment, then said, Ellie, are you sure about this? We're very selective about who we bring in. I thought about the slap, the lies, the 3 months of systematic humiliation as far. I'm sure, I said. I think she'd be a perfect fit. There was something in my voice that made him pause. Uncle James had known me my whole life. He knew I didn't make requests like this without reason. Okay, he said finally, I'll have our recruitment team reach out to her. We'll make it look completely natural, like we found her through professional networking. But, Rosie, if this is about something else, I cut him off gently. It's not. I just think she deserves an opportunity at a bigger company. That's what she wants. After I hung up, I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I looked different somehow, older maybe. A door had opened quietly inside Kingsley Holdings, and Agatha Rowland had no idea she was about to walk through it straight into a trap I'd carefully set. 2 weeks later, Agatha received a call during work hours. I watched from my desk as she stepped into the conference room, her voice rising with excitement even through the closed door. When she came out, her face was flushed, her eyes bright. 2 weeks after that day, she went straight to Mr. Wright's office. The announcement came. Agatha gathered the team in the conference room, standing at the head of the table like she was accepting an award. I wanted you all to know that I've accepted a position at Kingsley Holdings, she said, her voice dripping with pride. It's a significant step up, senior role in corporate communications. Of course, I'll miss Silverline, but sometimes you have to recognize when you've outgrown a place. She looked directly at me when she said that last part. Mr. Wright looked genuinely shocked and disappointed. Agatha, this is very sudden. You're a valuable part of our team. She waved a dismissive hand. I believe you'll manage, sir. Maybe this will teach certain people here what real standards look like. Her last 2 weeks were unbearable. She became even more cruel, as if she wanted to leave her mark on me permanently. But I smiled through it all. On her last day, the team threw a small farewell party. I watched her accept compliments and well wishes, completely unaware of what waited for her. As she walked out the door for the last time, I whispered under my breath, "Good luck, Agatha." Agatha's first day at Kingsley Holdings was everything she'd imagined. The building was glass and steel, towering over downtown with the Kingsley name in massive letters across the top. She wore her best suit and carried a leather portfolio that probably cost more than I made in a month. She was escorted to the corporate communications floor, a sleek space with modern furniture and walls of windows. Her new supervisor was waiting in his office. The nameplate on the door read, Collins Kingsley, Director of Corporate Communications. She knocked, walked in with confidence, and extended her hand. "Mr. Kingsley, I'm Agatha Rowland. I'm thrilled to be joining your team." Collins shook her hand with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He looked like our father, tall and distinguished with sharp features and dark hair. "Welcome to Kingsley Holdings, Mrs. Rowland. I've heard interesting things about you." Agatha beamed, missing the careful emphasis on interesting. "I'm excited to contribute. I have extensive experience in administrative oversight and team management." Collins nodded slowly. "Excellent. Let's talk about your first assignments." He opened a folder on his desk. What Agatha couldn't know, was that Collins was my brother, and he'd received a very detailed phone call from me about exactly how to handle the newest member of his team. Collins started small. He assigned Agatha to organize old filing systems in the basement archive room, work that was clearly beneath someone of her supposed expertise. When she tried to delegate it to junior staff, he called her into his office. "Mrs. Rowland, I need you to understand something about how we work here. Everyone does the work they're assigned, regardless of their title. No exceptions." His voice was pleasant but firm. The next week, he gave her impossible deadlines on meaningless reports, then publicly corrected minor formatting errors in team meetings. "The font should be Arial, not Calibri. Attention to detail matters here." He'd send her on errands across the building during important meetings, making her miss crucial discussions. He'd ask her to prepare coffee for client meetings, then criticize how she arranged the cups. Every tactic was subtle, professional, never quite crossing into obvious cruelty. But the cumulative effect was devastating. I heard about it all from Collins, who called me weekly with updates. "She complained to HR today that I'm giving her tasks below her pay grade," he said, sounding almost amused. "They documented it, but told her that building leadership requires understanding all aspects of the organization." She was furious. I listened, feeling nothing. Not satisfaction, exactly, just a quiet sense of balance being restored. Agatha was experiencing exactly what she put me through, only worse because she'd expected respect and authority. By week 16, Agatha was breaking down. I knew because Harriet, who'd also left Silverline for a better job, texted me with updates. She worked on a different floor at Kingsley Holdings but heard the gossip. "She's becoming the office problem," Harriet wrote. "People avoid her. She complains constantly about Collins, but HR keeps siding with him because technically he's not doing anything wrong. He's just holding her to the same standards as everyone else." The difference was that Agatha couldn't handle being treated the way she'd treated others. When Collins gave her menial tasks, she snapped at junior staff. When he corrected her publicly, she made excuses. When he scheduled early morning meetings, she arrived late and blamed traffic. HR documented everything. Every complaint she made, every deadline she missed, every time she spoke rudely to a colleague. Her file grew thick with incidents. Her reputation, which she'd spent years building, collapsed in weeks. One afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from Collins. She just asked if she could transfer departments. Told her these decisions come from above her pay grade. She looked like she might cry. I stared at the message, remembering how I'd cried in my car after her cruelty, how I'd questioned my own worth because of her systematic destruction of my confidence. The mirror was being held up, and Agatha finally saw what she looked like. Week 8. Collins called me on a Saturday morning. "She knows," he said simply. I was making coffee in my apartment, the real one now, the nice 2-bedroom place I'd moved into after finally telling my father what I'd been through. My hand froze on the coffee pot. "How?" Collins sighed. She was going through company directories looking for allies in other departments. She saw your name, Rose Kingsley, listed as inactive employee with a note about returning after external work experience. She connected the dots. My heart started racing. What did she do? There was a pause. She came to my office without an appointment, pushed past my assistant. She was shaking, almost hysterical. She said, "That intern from Silverline." Rose. She's your sister. I didn't deny it. I sat down on my couch, my coffee forgotten. What did you tell her? Collins's voice was cold, nothing like his usual warmth with me. I told her the truth. That yes, you're my sister. That you'd called me about her because you thought she might enjoy working for our family company. That we'd been impressed by her resume and experience. Then I asked her if there was a problem. Agatha had apparently stood there, the realization washing over her. This wasn't coincidence. The job offer, the treatment, everything had been orchestrated. She asked if this was revenge, Collins continued. I told her revenge would be illegal. This was simply holding her to our company standards. The termination meeting happened on a Wednesday morning. Collins called Agatha into the conference room where Uncle James from HR and another senior executive were waiting. I wasn't there, but Collins told me everything that night over dinner at our parents' house. They'd laid out her file. 8 weeks of documented issues, including insubordination, poor conduct, missed deadlines, and hostile interactions with colleagues. Uncle James had explained calmly that Kingsley Holdings maintained strict standards for all employees, especially those in leadership positions. Agatha had tried to argue, tried to explain that she'd been set up, that the treatment was unfair. But every complaint she made was documented with dates, times, and witness statements. You're firing me because of her, she'd said, finally pointing at my name in the file, where I was listed as the referring employee. Collins had looked at her with something like pity. Mrs. Rowland, we're terminating your employment because you failed to meet our standards. The fact that my sister recommended you for this position is irrelevant. She thought you wanted to work for a bigger company. We gave you that opportunity. What you did with it was entirely your choice. No references would be provided. No positive recommendation. The security guard walked her out that afternoon while her now former colleagues watched from their cubicles, the same way those at Silverline watched when she humiliated others. She was given a box for her personal items and escorted from the building. She never worked in corporate communications again. 6 months later, I started my official position at Kingsley Holdings, not in communications, but in operations where I wanted to be. My father had been proud when I told him everything, not about the revenge, but about how I'd handled adversity with strategy instead of emotion. Mr. Wright from Silverline called me once. I heard what happened with Agatha. He said, carefully, I want you to know that after you left, I looked into things. Other former employees came forward about her behavior. I'm sorry I didn't protect you better. I told him I understood, that sometimes people in power don't see abuse until it's too late. What I didn't tell him was that I still thought about Agatha. Sometimes. Not with satisfaction exactly, but with a strange sort of clarity. Revenge hadn't changed my heart or made me cruel. I hadn't destroyed Agatha. I'd simply put her in a position where she destroyed herself by being exactly who she'd always been. The difference was that at Kingsley Holdings, there was no one she could manipulate, no one she could lie to, and no one who would ignore her cruelty because confronting it was uncomfortable. She taught me how cruelty works, how it hides behind smiles and authority. And I taught her something too, that power, real power, doesn't come from hurting people who can't fight back. It comes from building systems where cruelty can't hide anymore. I didn't destroy her. I let her meet my family, and they let her be herself. And she took herself from a 100 or perhaps 70 to 0. There she was no job, still struggle. Sometimes that's the only justice necessary. If you've made it this far in our story, thank you for listening. If this resonated with you, if you've ever had to stand up to toxic supervisor, boss, or coworker, please share this video. Leave a comment about your own experience. You would be surprised how many people are listening. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more stories about real people standing up to injustice and finding their strength. Everyone is deserving of respect irrespective of age, sex, status, or financial strength.